Before we jump in, let's rewind. If you grew up on NFL Blitz, NBA Jam, Mortal Kombat, WrestleMania 2000, you know the era. Midway and Acclaim weren't just games, they defined an attitude. Midway was chaos and competition, arcade energy, over the top gameplay, and some of the most iconic cabinets of all time. And Acclaim brought the same energy home wrestling, Turok, Shadow Man, gritty, weird, and unforgettable. These brands didn't just publish franchises, they published flavors. They made games feel wild, loud, and unfiltered. Fast forward to today, two new chapters with the same DNA. Midwest Games and the revived Acclaim are channeling that spirit into something new. Back then, it was about breaking the mold, but today it's about redefining the field. New platforms, new tools, new ways to play. And if they have it their way, that same spark is coming back. Smarter, sharper, built for what's next. Ben and Alex are both the founders of Midwest Games and Play Acclaim. We are super excited to have you both here today. Ben, I'll give it to you first. Thanks for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Excited to chat. Love the retro reminder vibes. Uh, Gotta love it. Big piece of my childhood and just thinking about when built my company. A lot of it was built off of kind of some of the things I grew up with.
When you walked into the arcade, were you more of a Blitz and an NBA Jam, Mortal Kombat? What type of player were you?
I was definitely a blitz player. I was a huge NFL fan. I come from a long line of actually football athletes. My great grandfather was the first American inducted in the CFL Hall of Fame, like Canadian Football League, and is a Hall of Famer at EW Madison as well for football and basketball and track. So it's always about football. In fact, my first career choice was to go into sports management with the Packers. I went to UW Green Bay to try to get into that route. Didn't work out. Ended up in video games instead, which is much better, but still have a great love for the NFL. And Blitz was, obviously as a kid, incredible.
Safe to say you're a Packers part owner.
Yes, I am a Packers part owner.
There you go. Congrats. And Alex Joseph, CEO of Play Acclaim, thank you so much for jumping in today. You want to do a little intro of yourself and let us know as well. Are you a NFL Blitz, Jam, Mortal Kombat type of player?
Yeah, well, I'll just start with that. Definitely more Mortal Kombat, even Joust. Um, just like old school arcade. I remember I spent a lot of time. There was a place in my neighborhood. It was called Captain Videos, and I used to live there. Um, so that was really cool. Yeah. This is exciting. This is kind of like coming full circle. I've been in games for a really, really long time, and I've had the opportunity to work with a ton of great publishers, developers on the marketing side, on the publishing side. So this is a really exciting time. I'm very excited to be part of Acclaim and revitalizing and rebuilding this iconic brand. So this is a and this should be a really good time having this conversation. So I'm excited about it.
Why Acclaim? Why did you decide to revive Acclaim?
So, okay, very good question. And it was not just my decision. I was involved in it. I had some folks come to me, I don't know, a little over a year ago, year and a half ago, and talking about, they were all industry people, heavily embedded in the industry, people I had known for a long time, said, what do you think about, looking at some sort of like an iconic brand that we could sort of revitalize and then just do really cool stuff and sort of in line with that brand identity, but uh, for a new gaming audience. And I loved it. I thought it was just a really cool idea. And it wasn't necessarily going to be, it was Acclaim and there were one or two others. But we just kept coming back to Acclaim. I was like, I love Acclaim. I love Acclaim. And so we settled on that. And then, they're like, well, what if you were to spearhead this and kind of take the helm? I was like, oh gosh, I don't know. I'm kind of like enjoying my whole consulting thing, but this sounds like a really fun project, and this sounds really cool. So we went for it, and I was not prepared. I will admit, I was not prepared for what the response would be out of the gate. It was pretty insane. And right after that, I realized sort of that the brand influence and the um, and what we could really do with this. And a lot of things changed. A lot of the sort of the the plan and the sort of strategy for the trajectory of the brand and for the company did shift a little bit. But I think we have some really cool stuff planned. It's not all about. Everybody's always like, well, what are you going to bring back? What old IP? And it's like, why? Nobody under 30 knows who Acclaim is, you know? So how about we just look at some, forward looking stuff? We look at some really cool things that are in line with some of the old IP and some of the old greats where you can say like, oh, this is kind of reminds me a little of this. This is like, there's some sort of connection, but it's for a new audience but it still resonates, I guess, with that nostalgic, gamer and the iconic Acclaim brand. So that's sort of the objective, and that's where we're going, and I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, I am too. Like I said, I feel like it's the rebirth of the era that we kind of grew up in gaming, and we're going to hopefully start to see that energy with some of the smaller double A indie titles that are coming out. Before we jump too much into that, let's just talk about what games are you playing today, and maybe what's exciting you about the gaming industry as a player of video games. And Ben, you want to kick this one off?
Sure, what I'm playing today? Well, NCAA football just came out. It revitalized. Well, last year it revitalized after 11 years. So, been trying to bring my Badgers back, but then also, they have a great create a team mode or create a university mode. And so I'm able to bring UW Green Bay in despite not having a football team. Thanks, Vince Lombardi, for that. If you don't know, Vince Lombardi prevented UW Green Bay from having a football team because they didn't want to compete with the Packers from a audience perspective. Not that they would. But that and RimWorld, which if you've never played RimWorld, one of the I think most rated games on Steam in history. I think I forget how many hundreds of thousands of reviews they have on Steam, and so I play that one as a colony simulation strategy game. So if I don't resource manage enough during the day as a CEO, I have to do it in my gaming as well.
Nice. How about Alex? What are you playing these days, and what's exciting you?
I'm going to be totally honest. I'm playing I'm inundated with games that have been submitted to us. A combination of game submissions and then also games that we are in the process of publishing. So we got some really cool stuff, which I'm very excited about. I wish I could talk about them right now, but
Go for it.
I'm a little bit I'm a little prohibited from doing that. But outside of that, I just haven't had a whole lot of time. I'll be actually, I have been playing a bit. Shout out to Mod Retro and the Chromatic. I've been playing Tetris on that. If you guys know that, the Mod Retro Chromatic, I got hooked on that, which I used to be hooked on that many years ago, probably 30 plus years ago, to the point where I'd be falling asleep and seeing Tetris bricks falling in my sleep. But that is just still as addictive as it once was, and that's a really cool device. So, um, but I've been pretty inundated with game submissions, and we have some really cool stuff. So that's pretty awesome.
How do you make time? I guess for both of you, right? I mean, you want to play these new hits that are coming out. You also want to check out these cool indies that are coming out. And to your point, you're probably getting hundreds, if not thousands, of submissions of games that want to be published by you, right? Like at some point, gaming must be a chore, not a hobby anymore, right? And how do you kind of click your brain from work mode play to casual mode play? You want to start
That's
this
a
one out? Yeah.
difficult one because, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head, like the whole chore and hobby. When it's your work, the question is, is it still a hobby or is it now your work? And how much of your work are you going to want to do in your off time? I still love to play. I think I'm a lot more selective in the games that I play and the games that I'm playing for just sort of leisure time. And I'm also coming across so much great stuff that, in terms of submissions, game submissions, and things that aren't out there yet, and things where there's a game demo and we're evaluating it, that I mean, there's one game that we're looking at right now, and I've already put in, just in over the weekend, like 3.5 hours on the demo, and I didn't expect that at all. It sort of caught me off guard. So, um, yeah, it's tough though to sort of separate the two and still keep leisure gaming enjoyable and also be able to set aside time if there's a game that I have my eye on, or something that I'm excited about releasing and I want to play. So carving out the time for that.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I find myself going a lot back to kind of just the games I know, Fortnite, because
Mm.
you could just kind of turn your brain off.
It's it's an interesting moment because a lot of people, because of just the amount of content and things you're getting swarmed with at all times, whether it be games or shows or whatnot, a lot of us go back to that, wherever we feel comfortable. I think that's the reason people love Steam, because it still feels like it's from 20 years ago. There's like something comfortable about that. And some of the games you used to play, or just know, like, you don't, at the end of the day, like, our days are so full of so many different things happening, for, as a business owner, like fundraising and, managing a team, trying to come up with all the strategy. I just don't want to learn something like new, so I go back to a game that I'm used to. It's something I already know the parameters around. I know I can just dive in, I can zone out. But as far as playing titles, I love games. I could play games all the time. I think what people don't think about with some of the games, like, oh, it must be cool to like see all these new games all the time, reviewing them, like evaluating them. Well, yeah, no, because they're all broken. They're all, you have to like look through a lens of what they could be months, years from now, compared to where they are now, which is oftentimes really rough or broken, or there's many issues. And so all of those are like, you have to play them in a very different way. You have to put on your potential hat. You have to be able to evaluate the studio and what the vision is, and be able to say, oh yeah, this thing is going to eventually be it, even though I can barely get through a level right now. And so that can be, it can take away some of the fun of it, but still, I'm a guy that loves to look at the potential of what something can become. And so that's the part that I'm always excited about with creators, because if I can like envision what they're envisioning, like, that gets me really excited.
I have this question, and I don't know how it comes off, right? But when you're playing this game, are you looking more for kind of that core loop of what you're having fun with, the potential and how that could be monetized? Is it a fair mix of both? Is it like it's a slippery slope, right? I mean, these what I like about the AA revival that we're seeing right now is that there's no in-game purchases, right? So you're basically spending $30 on the game itself, and we're seeing that have a comeback now, right? And maybe it has people rethinking, hey, what is our live ops strategy? Are we going to continue this down the line? Can we make enough from this one-time purchase? And I'm curious, when you're playing a game, like, how do you juggle that? You want to start at either one,
Where
Alex?
where to start with that? I mean, you never want to focus too much on the monetization piece, but at the same point, you can't not think about it being a piece of the overall pie, because if you want to build a successful title that can, grow into something larger, which is, I think, the goal of a lot of these things. Like, if your goal isn't to build an audience and make money, okay, like, there's absolutely, you can do that, but just know that you're probably not going to work with a publisher, because the publisher is thinking about that. But there's, I think, a good way to think about it, and there's a kind of toxic way to think about it. If you're only ever thinking about the monetization, well, maybe like free to play mobile is your world, like, because that's all they do. In a lot of ways, is think about it. Now they still have to get a core game loop and all of that kind of stuff, but I do see a shift towards now that devices, even mobile devices, can be played with like premium type of games, larger experiences, things like that. Yeah, there's a lot more of just like one purchase and that's it. And so then if that's really the strategy, you have to make sure that you're at the right price point. Does it evaluate against the rest of the comps around it and still not look like it's overpriced? Like you want people to think, "Oh, what a deal compared to what I'm getting." In some ways. So you have to be thinking about it because the market will evaluate it whether they realize it or not. But at the same point, if you're only thinking about the monetization, you're ignoring the audience that you're trying to go after, and the audience is what's most important, and what they are okay with paying, and what they are okay with like just looking at what the title is. Like you have to think about what the audience is going to perceive the title as based on the price and the quality and what you're offering with it.
I strategically let you go first on that one. Uh, That's a really interesting question, and it's very difficult. Look, this is a business. No matter how you look at it, you got to look at it as a business because otherwise, what are we doing? What are we in this for? We're in this particular kind of area of business because we love games, but the idea is that we find a way and we determine a way. I mean, a lot of the reason that a developer wants to work with a publisher, let's say, is to help them to make money for their games, so they can make money, so that they can build or sustain their studio, and so that they can make more games. um, the unfortunate thing is there's an audience of gamers that are kind of have this uh, predetermined or preset sort of uh, view on what a game should cost and what it should deliver in terms, gameplay, amount of gameplay. And it doesn't seem to be moving. Like that needle seems stuck. Like games are, indie titles seem to be stuck at X amount, this little range between, I don't know, $12 and $20 or $12 and $25 for I don't know how many years, the last
Mhm.
decade plus. um, Not even adjusting for inflation and not even taking into consideration, you go out to you go out to a movie for 2 hours and you buy popcorn and sodas. I'm constantly saying this. You can't walk out of there for less than like 50, $60. It's
Mhm.
crazy. But God forbid you have a game that's, an indie title that's priced more, higher than $20, and you're not delivering like it's like tens of hours of gameplay and very, it's a little crazy. But then again, like a live ops game or a game with in-app purchases, all of a sudden someone will spend, you know, 50, 60, 70, 100, $120 on,
Mhm.
cosmetic upgrades and buffs, etc., and they won't even think twice about that. So I'm a big fan of supporting a game that has, here's what it is. It's a one-time purchase and it's going to provide you with a really solid amount of entertainment. And the developer has poured their heart and soul into it, whether they've been developing it for 3 years or 10 years. And, give them kudos for that. It's worth your 20 or $25. It doesn't have to be 15 or $10. It's worth $30. It's worth, or more than that, for the enjoyment that it's going to give you and for the replayability that it's going to give you and for the effort that the developer put in. So that's my take on that. I'm not a big, I think live ops and the whole, in-game purchasing is a whole other beast that's a lot more difficult to navigate, and there's maybe a whole other science to that. So
Yeah.
I would tend to shy away from that myself personally.
I love
Yeah.
that. I always tell my wife, and she actually got into the habit now of like, she's been playing the same game for years. I'm just like, pay, like, it's a few bucks a month, right? Like, you're supporting these people that are building these levels, right? Like, think of all the hours of entertainment. You said it perfectly, right? Like, a movie and a date is going to cost you $50. You've been playing this game for 20 hours now and you haven't put a penny in. It's like, cool, but you're going to watch ads and don't complain. And like, again, it's the time value of money, right? People have to realize that you're spending so much time doing this, and I think I'm going to change the topic here a little bit, but maybe it's just me. But I feel like in the past few months, the tide in gaming is starting to turn. We're seeing kind of the success of double A's. We're seeing some more indies come out. I think there's still obviously some problems in the industry, but I feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel, and I think there's some cool topics that are kind of front and center for studios right now. And I'm curious how excited or exciting these are to you guys when you see games that have these tools in them, right? So, for example, the first one we hear a lot about these days is UGC. It helps build community, it helps build engagement, it helps build monetization strategies, right? Are you interested in technologies like this? And when you see a game that comes up in front of you that has a plan for that, does it create a little like spark of excitement for you?
I think that I definitely think that that can be a very cool. We're actually dealing with this and kind of with one of our titles right now. I think depending on what type of game it is, UGC can be extremely valuable, and it can help to build and foster a community and an interaction and create longevity for a game. That said, I think it unfortunately, well, or fortunately, whatever, it requires a little bit of oversight and policing, so things don't go haywire. Depending on what type of content it is that is able to be created. Um, I think it's a really important part of gaming to have. This is such an interactive art or activity that it's so important to make the community and the players feel a part of the game and integrate their creativity versus just having them play, if that makes sense. That said, I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I just think it's like an added component. It's an added perk. And I think that a game can be great with or without.
So kind of in a way, don't force a technology or something into a game when it doesn't fit properly, right? Just because it's the new sexy thing on the street doesn't mean it's
Yeah,
the right thing for you.
yeah. Don't yeah. No square pegs and round holes.
Well, and we also have to remember it's not like it's new. Now people have turned it into a way like Fortnite, like Roblox, into a way to engage your users, to be creators, and to essentially make you more money. But this was happening 15, 20, 25 years ago as well. So it's not new. It's just it's become a way to create a walled garden for people, and people are retaining users at higher rates than they ever have in the history of games, which is why older games have lasted longer than ever before. uh, but at the same point, it's not for everybody. And it also, you have to realize what it's doing to our overall ecosystem, because it's preventing people from going and buying new games. So, as much as like Fortnite thrives, it's directly attributed also to the other side of things, of people not buying new games and not going out, and also having an expectation that I can get free experiences from these titles. I don't have to pay anything, so it devalues our value as game developers as well. So there's a real negative to it if not, thought about right. And also, they brag about the amount of money going into UGC platforms and saying, "Oh, well, we paid out this much money to creators." But they don't but if you do the calculation per creator that has put out something, people are barely making anything off of those except for the platform, except for the game. And so we just have to remember what it is used for. It is used to engage users more in an individual experience. But then as an industry, too much of that, I think, actually is harming our entire industry. And I think it could become a real problem if Fortnite were to able to retain all their users for the next 20 years, because of everything like that, the rest of the industry is going to look very different than it looked in the past.
These forever games, how do new experiences come? And that also had me thinking, when you look at the top 10 games out right now, is there going to be a point where one of those top 10 games is an in-game experience on one of these platforms? Because you already have so many eyeballs
Mhm.
on that platform. Can it ever do that? All right, let's jump to the second thing I see being top of mind a lot these days is discoverability. People are talking about Steam. It's getting hard to be discovered on Steam. Steam is throwing a lot new kind of Next Fest, Summer Games Fest, all these other things that are on there. So they're having all these Steam sales. From what I'm seeing more games come out on platforms like itch.io. I think it's reminding me of my high school days. We used to like do the web games in there, and it seems like they're coming back. And I'm curious if these web games excite you guys at all, if it's things you're paying attention to, and are you seeing kind of, or how are you helping some of your studios with discoverability?
So web games create accessibility to games. It is a low barrier of entry towards these titles, and so as the idea of the democratization of platforms, being able to play any game anywhere on any device, web fits really well into that. You can basically take your web game, even put it on Discord now. So the ability to just easily access games is going to continually increase the amount of gamers worldwide, which there's already close to 3.8 billion. Uh, and a lot of the limitation on why it's not 8 billion is just the accessibility to be able to play games easily from anywhere in the world. And so I see it as an accessibility piece that will open it up, but how does that work with the monetization piece? I think we're in kind of an early stage, probably more similar to when mobile was first coming online as a viable gaming download location. I see it needs to be figured out. Is it going to be part of like larger services? Are we going to see folks like Netflix go on and attach into the web game space in larger ways, or are we going to see uh, are we going to see others just try to figure out how they can put their game on really any platform imaginable? And so it's an exciting point because anybody can game, but how are we going to adjust to the limitations that are on web in comparison? And does it match what the market is looking for? Does the TikTok generation want those kinds of gaming experiences? If so, they're going to take off in a huge way because you're going to be able to access them anywhere. So I think it's an exciting time because we have a lot of new ways people can play. We're not stuck on a console or on anything like that. And if you can imagine it, you can probably figure out a way to play it on something that you wouldn't normally think you could play games on.
Have you played any WebGL games recently?
I'm an advisor on a group that put out a game on Discord, called, well, it's just blackjack, and they got over 1 million MAU on that game on Discord. So yeah, so that one, but not a lot of others. Like a lot of the games we review and support are PC focused first,
Hmm.
but I am seeing more of that kind of come up, and I think traditional publishers don't look at that as much because they're smaller, more focused experiences, but it's actually huge opportunities. I think we're going to see some new publishers or new entities explode by focusing in on that a bit and that being their specialty. So it's that part's exciting, but the traditional folks, it's really hard to take your the ways that they evaluate things and evaluate risk and then put it towards kind of this new wave of and new types of games.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you even just mentioned the Netflix model. I mean, and they're in gaming, but it makes perfect sense, right? Like you already could go to Itch. You have a well curated list of games you can scroll, and obviously Itch is just like it, but you could sell that subscription for it and just charge people with access to that high premium
Well, it becomes a discovery challenge at that point. I think one of the biggest problems and challenges right now is just discovery of games that you want to play, and how do you feature. We don't have a player curation platform in the entire industry. Like, nothing serves you just what you would want to play. It's always based around, well, how much will the platform make off of this? And it's a
Mhm.
calculation on their end to serve you the thing that is ultimately going to make them the most amount of money. It might not be the thing that you want to play. So we don't really have a player curation platform. I think somebody's going to come up with a way to do that and serve the game that you really want in the moment that you want it.
My fear of that would be the Pandora effect, right? You listen to Pandora long enough and you just get the same band that's playing over and over again, right? And then you're stuck in first person shooters. How do I ever find out the latest
Yeah.
casual game that's coming out, right? So that would be kind of phase two of that.
I mean, what you get, look at your Netflix. It does that. It does
Yeah.
a consumer curation of what it is. And so yeah, if you just watch, holiday rom-coms, you're gonna get a lot of
Right.
that.
How about Alex? Have you kept your eye on the web space at all? Is it something that excites you?
It's interesting. I have not had my eye on it at pretty much at all. It's definitely interesting. I think there's there's something there in terms of future and future growth. Not super high on my radar right now at the moment. You asked the question about discoverability. I think that's just a bear. It's really, I don't know. It's not an art. It's not a science. It's there's some sort of component of both of those. Just doing the best that you possibly can to, let's just talk about Steam, like optimizing for Steam. Taking advantage of every single possible tool or every tactic that you can utilize to take advantage of the algorithm and to exploit and promote the game in every way that you possibly can on socials, PR, etc. It's just it's an uphill battle. I mean, every year there's more and more games releasing. We'll eclipse this year. Last year we eclipsed the year before. I think we're almost already at this year.
Hmm.
I was looking this up a few days ago, but I could be totally wrong. I think we're almost at the total number of games that were released 2 years ago
Hmm.
this year, um, or very close to it, within like 1,000. That's insane, and it's just going to continue to grow and discoverability, and that's the most difficult thing I think for a solo like indie developer, unless they get some sort of enormous success and there's some crazy virality with a trailer or something or an announcement and they get very lucky. It's really difficult if you don't have like an immense budget, because you're competing with just so many. Not only is it all the noise, but you're competing with games that have immense marketing budgets, and or professional marketers behind it, in terms of in the sense of like agencies or whatnot, the big AAA budgets. It's very difficult, and a lot of the events, like whatever summer sale, Next Fest, whatever, these are great. They can be great if you utilize them in the right way, or they can totally crush you if you don't utilize them in the right way and you launch a game. And I just watched a great game launch during um, the summer sale and just get totally buried.
Hmm.
And it did, unfortunately, not nearly as well as it should have. So I felt really badly for the developer.
I I did a podcast with one of the guys, Mark Otero. He's the founder of Azure Games. He did Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and he made this comment. He said, "By the time a game chooses you, you've already been selected," and it was fascinating because it's making a game look at their marketing budget and say, "Hey, who am I going to properly market to? Because I'm going to find my audience." And it was interesting, right? Because we always talk about audience building. How do you find the right people to play your game? What's the demographic? What channel are they on? It's going back to everything you're talking about, discoverability. And now it comes back to I need budget to be able to do this. How am I going to be able to afford this? I'm making this really cool little game and I need to get in front of these people and I got to go through EA and Activision. How am I supposed to take down those, right? And then we go back to even earlier in our conversation where we were talking about the content creators who do the viral game playing of these games, influencers, right? So it seems to be this cycle and it's kind of vicious. And I feel like eventually kind of the indies are going to start to become bigger indies, right? And be able to afford a little more, right? I think that's how the cycle has to kind of
Well,
conclude.
only if we can get indies to create repeated success. They're not going to grow into this like middle class if they have one flash in the pan success. And the challenge right now is we're just not in a sustainable environment to support studios to be able to have lasting success. They give up too much of their rights, too much rev share, too much whatever to be able to get into their own cycle. And then it's also really difficult to ever have two successes. A studio that can create a second big success is really, 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 really rare because it's really rare to have a first success. And to Alex's point around amount of games, what it was almost 19,000 games last year. I'm expecting like 25,000 this year coming out. You're just competing with so many, and there is no formula. People keep wanting to be like, oh, look what this game did, and that is the formula for success. That's a bunch of BS. Like everyone that looks at that, they ignore the 1,000 games before them, the 1,000 games after them that did the same exact thing and didn't succeed. All these things are tools that might increase your chance, but the reality with the volume of titles is your chances are very, very low. So you want to try to get as many of those tools as you possibly can. You want to do everything right, but you still have to know that there are massive challenges to cutting through the noise. Some of it is completely out of your control, and there's people that get lucky with featuring or timing, or unlucky with featuring and timing. They get buried by some other thing, or EA randomly puts out something, without it. We had an announcement where suddenly, uh, what was it? Bethesda announced and released a game on the same day that we had an announcement of something, and we had no idea that was coming. And so you try to line up everything as best you can. What I encourage folks to do is be ready to pivot quickly towards the audience that it's resonating with. Uh, engage them more. Go down that hole of, like, it might be an unexpected rabbit hole, but you got to go down it and be ready to just like run at that if you start to see traction in some area. So you have to be very nimble and flexible in this environment, because you have to find, like, whatever trail you can find, go after that trail and see if it leads somewhere. Because there is no tried and true way of doing things. You can't just, oh yeah, we're going to do this beat, this beat, this beat. We're going to have, we're going to be at GameStop, we're going to be at Walmart, we're going to be like, that world no longer exists. I mean, you can make some money off of that if you have a game that gets to that level, but for the most part, you have to be able to take all the best practices and then try to put your own spin on it and find your own audience in your own unique way. And if you're able to do that, like, that's where you can see folks finding success.
Yeah, yeah, that's well said. Yeah, the democratization of game publishing has kind of been, I think, a blessing and a curse.
Hmm.
Whereas it makes it very easy and accessible in terms of being able to create a game and get it out on, make it available to the public, whether that's on Steam or console. I think Steam, it becomes really, really difficult because you're not, console. There's an opportunity if you're discovered there to get some to get some support from the various platforms. I think you see that a little bit more than with Steam, where you're not even going to ever talk to anybody. Um, Nobody's going to discover you and reach out to you. And going at it alone, you only know what you know. So you can only get as far as you can. And what you don't know is like this enormous abyss that can really work against you. So it just makes it so much more difficult for an independent developer. And I think that's a lot of times why they'll look at partnering or working with a publisher. I mean, at the end of the day, I always liken this industry a lot to music. Back years ago, I was kind of uh, a little bit involved in the music industry, just kind of on the fringes and with some of the people that I hung out with in SoCal. And it was the creatives were, the musicians and the people that were creating awesome music and had these awesome bands. And then there were the, music record labels or record music publishers or whatever that were the business side of things. And it was a little bit of a screwy dynamic, but the the creatives, they didn't have the they want to make awesome music and then go out and tour and make money and party. And which was awesome. But who's going to do the business part of it, and who's going to market and record and this and that, right? And cut and edit, and so it's very similar, I think, that dynamic and that relationship. And but it's a lot more collaborative, and I think that there's really good opportunities for developers to work alongside publishers in a very collaborative way and get their game uh, help them to get their game much further than if they were to just go at it alone.
I love the "you only know what you know" comment. I think that's something that kind of strikes home here, but it's everyone should be aware, right? You only know the stuff that you know. I don't know how Steam works. Someone else has been there before, and it kind of leads to what Ben was saying. It's like you need to learn from the experience of the people that have been here before, right? We've fallen, we've gotten back up, we've wiped off our knees, and we hopefully learn from that, right? And years down the line, through the cycle, we will fall again, but the idea is to keep learning from this experience. And if people have gone through discoverability issues, if people have gone through how to get my game listed on Steam or how to market to the right audience, right? Like, why are you going to try learning from? Why are you going to try starting to learn from scratch? It leads into why do we go to a publisher, right? I think if I'm an indie studio, I'm thinking to myself, if I go to a publisher, I'm going to have to give up half of my rights. I'm going to have to give up half of my IP, and I'm screwed. What does publishing look like for a studio's perspective? What are they forfeiting? Maybe that's not the best word to use, but that's the one that came to mind.
Well, I mean, what are they getting? Like they get those services, they get the support, and I think the knowledge in this space expires pretty quickly these days. Your knowledge of Steam, with how fast Steam is changing, expires at a certain point. If you released a game 2 years ago, is it still relevant to what Steam is today? I would argue it's not. I would argue it's a completely different system than it was 2 years ago. And so what you're getting is the most up to date knowledge to give you the best chance of success by having a partner that has resources to help complement some of the gaps that you may have as a developer. Every developer is different. Some people might be really good with community building and social. Some developers are not. But what a publisher does is provides a lot of those experiences for a developer to be able to essentially gain them without having to learn them. And the learning piece takes a long time. I believe that to really understand publishing as a holistic entity, you have to be in it for 10 plus years. It's not something you just can problem solve and work your way through, because by the time you do, because you're only putting out a game every so often, you lose your knowledge quickly. It's just really inefficient to do it that way versus a group that is always doing this. My One of my comparisons I said to somebody the other day was, listen, like, it's not that a game developer that just put out their game is wrong. They're kind of like a fitness like YouTuber. Like, it's not that a fitness YouTuber is wrong about it, but their experience is relevant to them and kind of themselves. It might not even be, it might be relevant to their own body, versus a doctor that studies this and understands the full perspective of something and studies it, spends years doing it, has gone through many, many case studies to kind of evaluate it, and just has a better perspective to be able to help support what you're trying to do, in that case from a fitness or from a health level of things, but from our case, from a helping to put something out. Now, it doesn't mean that it always is going to go smooth. It doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect, and it doesn't mean that the YouTuber's wrong. Like that's the thing about it, is you just have to understand there's a larger perspective. There's 25,000 games coming out, so there's 25,000 different case studies, and a lot of people will do the same thing and fail as somebody that succeeds. So what is it actually that's making something succeed? And that's what a publisher, I think, brings, is a lot of perspective.
I think the most important thing that a developer should sit and ask themselves is how much of this do I want to go at all on my own? What am I good at? What am I not good at? Where could a if I was to work with a partner like a publisher, what do I need from them? Where can they help me? And what am I bringing to the table for them? That's really important because at the end of the day, it's a partnership. I think it should be a collaboration. I think there's certain questions that I never hear a developer ask that I think are important to ask. And it's a lot of focus on, I think, the wrong things. A lot of it is just focused on, the dollars and cents and the money and the split and this and that. I think there's a lot more involved that needs to be discussed and determined. And for a developer to feel comfortable moving forward with a publisher, because not all publishers are the same. In fact, a lot of them are extremely, very, very different, drastically different in the way they operate, the way that what they're providing, how they're providing it, all kinds of things. And it has to be the right fit for the developer, and it has to be the right fit for the game. That said, I think the obvious things that a developer is looking for from a publisher is maybe some funding, maybe some marketing support. That's not something that they want to handle on their own. Maybe some help with outside sort of vendors or services like localization, QA, porting is a big one.
Hmm.
And those are the obvious things that a publisher can come in and help with. Why are they going to do those better than a developer on their own? Maybe it's because they've got relationships that are doing more volume with certain partners so that they can get negotiated rates. Maybe it's because they've vetted certain partners and they've been through 3 different localization companies, reporting companies. They know, okay, these 2 leave us hanging. This one always delivers on time. They're thorough, and we get through LQA, and everything is peachy. They're solid. They're not going to waste our time. They're not going to waste our money. Maybe it's because maybe the publisher has solid relationships with like the consoles, Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation, and are able to negotiate marketing support or whatnot for a game. Uh, any number of things, but I think without getting too long-winded, the important things that a developer should be asking is, well, how can you help me without being heavy-handed and changing my game or being or trying to be a creative, because I've got that down. What can you bring to the table for me in terms of feedback and play testing and to help me make my game the best that it can possibly be? And that's what I never hear a developer ask, and that's super important, right? I want to drive that point home when we're talking to developers, and I'm always part of those conversations because I want to look at a game and I want to be able to I want to see it, and I want to be like, okay, I see where there's an audience for this game, and I get where that audience lives, and I dig this game. This game's cool. But I want to be able to explain, hey, this is what we're going to bring to the table. We're going to put a lot of effort into this besides like the dollars that are going to be spent. This is how we're justifying what we're going to take in terms of what we're asking for in terms of this is a collaboration and a shared venture, and this is what we're going to provide to you in terms of feedback for your game to help you make the best game possible. Because at the end of the day, we all want to, whether it's a single, a double, or a home run, right? Not every single game is going to be a grand slam, home run, sell a million units, but we want the developer to walk away at the end of the day feeling like that was a way better experience than I would have had on my own. Like I wouldn't have gotten anywhere near that level of response
Mhm.
for my game or sales on my own.
Well, now, Alex, I think you just said a key thing with that is it's all in comparison to if you were to do it yourself. Is it driving like an above and beyond? And sometimes the amount you can get is only so much, and sometimes like it gets you into something that you would have never gotten into, whether it be like a showcase or a featuring with a partner or things like that. And that one thing could be all the difference between having something that ultimately is drowned out by everything else versus something that actually gets featured, gets a lot of sales, and you're able to kind of grow past that. The other thing I'll say is there's also I think new ways that we can be approaching this whole publishing model. Like there's the traditional way that's all about rev share, IP rights, or like long term like attachments, and then there's we created shadow publishing where it is a for hire service. We don't take any rev share. We don't take any IP rights. You can just hire us. But in order to do that, you have to budget so that you have money to be able to pay for these services that then you don't have to give up your rights on the back end because you actually have the money on the front end. With so that requires a lot more extensive knowledge of the business ecosystem, how to raise your own money, how to budget it, like and what partners could we do? What are my options in this space? And so I think a big piece of this overall is we need developers to get more sophisticated in the business end of things because that will allow them to really have options on the table versus if they don't understand that they're running a business and they're just going after their creative endeavor, which fine, if that's what you want to do. But if you don't understand you're running a business, then the business that you're potentially going to partner with could take advantage of you and get rights that don't make sense, like that anyone would look at and be like, wow, that is a bit like predatory. But the reality is like I think we have to have a developer ecosystem that gets more sophisticated in this space so that they understand what these things mean both short term and long term, and then they can make decisions off of it. And just know if you're coming to the table and you have no money, you're going to really struggle to negotiate a great deal with a publisher unless you have something that has something else like traction. If you come to the table and you already have 200,000 wish lists, awesome. You have traction and you have some leverage that you can, and so then you can understand how to get a better deal. But you have to understand that we're a business. Everybody is, even if you're putting out a game, even if it's just for creative endeavors, you're still running a business because at the end of the day, you could make money off of that.
Yeah, I think you guys said so much there, and I think it's so great. And the ones that really kind of stand out were for me with your shadow publishing, Ben. Right, like you're giving them access to all these tools. Right, we've always talked about how publishing needs to change, and it's fascinating how yes, you pay a little money up front, right, beforehand, but you get to keep everything in your game, and then you have access to this suite. And I think all this is about education, and you both kind of led to this whole relationship as being win-win-win, right? Because that's the ideal, right? The publisher wins, the studio, the developer wins, the player wins because you have a better product, right? It comes to market quicker, you get found. And Alex, as you were talking, it's kind of going through my head like, holy shit, it is hard to become a publisher. You guys both are the CEO of a publishing company, and I'm curious, like, Alex, as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking, you're probably doing a lot of networking throughout the day, or like, because maybe it was Ben that was saying who has the best relationship with this studio or that studio. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you guys are playing games all day. You're doing this. No, you're not playing games all day, right? But like, What skills do you think you use mostly on a day-to-day basis as a founder of a publishing studio? Like what hat do you wear the most?
That's a really good question. 100%, I'm gonna say at this juncture, it's a lot of it's the negotiating hat with partners, with vendors, and just ensuring that we're going to be providing the best services for the best possible rates for developers. So in negotiating across the board, even with developers, I mean, the business negotiations, they have to be done in a fair manner, but in a manner that makes sense, and it has to make sense for both. And if not, it will just lead to just not a good situation in the future. You should never enter into any type of business arrangement where there's the possibility for resentment in the future. uh, and sometimes the best negotiated compromise is the compromise where both parties walk away unhappy. That's probably the sign of the best compromise. But that, I would say that, and yeah, a bit of the networking, and then just keeping management is sort of the high level. It's just keeping the train on the tracks and having really, really solid people that you can count on and that you can trust implicitly, and that will come to you if there's a question about something, and if you need to weigh in. So that's one. I'd say the other area is just being aware, highly aware of everything that is going on, but not having to micromanage or be involved in every single thing.
All right. You're very business focused. That's what I'm getting from
In
your
that sense, yeah,
monetization
like
answer.
on
That's the answer. Like,
as
all right, he's all about that, and I love it, man. Like, you need that look at it when you're looking at a company, right? Like, you're here to grow the company. You're here to make the smartest choices
yeah.
possible, right? Like, and I love that.
I'm super. I'm very aware of spending other people's money. In fact, it's something that, like, I have no problem. Like, I just like bleed through my own, but not really. But I'm much more judicious and just aware of what I'm doing and how I'm spending with other people's money. And but overall, I'm also pretty laid back. I'm not like all businessy CEO.
Mhm.
Um, I had like someone on my team today just be all like, I just love that you're like chill. I'm like, well, I don't know how else to be.
There you go.
It's just how I am. So,
There you
but
go.
it's worked for me so far, fortunately.
What about you, Ben? What do you find yourself kind of which hat most often?
Yeah, I'm constantly in solutions or like problem solving, or like more the sales opportunity, looking at something and saying how could we make this work? How could we take what they're doing and support them in the best possible way to make an outcome that is beneficial for them? And then what is the right justification for what we get for that, and how is that, and is it fair at the end of the day, and is it, to what Alex said, you know is it gonna is it gonna be good, a year from now? Are you still gonna like each other based on that, or is there something in this agreement, or in, you're working with, that is gonna actually probably sour over time? Because it is sometimes something looks very positive, especially like people just don't realize maybe something, and then down the line it will come back and bite you because you didn't really think about that piece of it. So a lot of it is just like, how do we think about the long term of what we want this thing to be, and create an agreement or create a partnership that will work both in the short term and long term. And sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes it doesn't work. You have different long term goals, or different short term goals, and so I have this problem solving hat on, or I guess like putting a puzzle together. I'm always putting puzzles together. That's all I do all day long, is like puzzle solving. And it's a lot around kind of the business and negotiations and sales, and then the networking. Like, how could me meeting somebody benefit somebody else, that obviously then it also can benefit us in what we're doing, and how do all those pieces work together? And so I network a lot, like, and obviously my LinkedIn stuff has like gone viral at times, and it's all about kind of like making those connections, making that network, so that you can create the best solutions for somebody else that ultimately, yeah, benefits us, but in a fair way, like, because other people are getting benefits from those things happening, and we're able to come up with a way that we can all work together to be able to push forward. And this is like, a lot of it has to do with our business style is a bit different than most. And I see ourselves more like a film production company than a games company, where we help enable and champion a creative and help connect them to the right pieces on the board, and we bring together all the best board pieces that we can in the given situation to give them the best chance at succeeding with that.
Love it. This goes to kind of what you were saying before about networking and learning from experience, and people have done it before, right? When you build out that network, you understand how people work. And you both kind of said the same thing, as don't burn a bridge, right? If you don't want to screw people over, you don't want to be screwed over by people. If it's kind of the best deal to just walk away from something, it seems like bite your tongue, walk away, and try and stay
Yeah,
in good
this is
graces.
it's a small industry. It's a great industry, but it's a small industry. And the one thing I love is that I'm a terrible networker. But like, I'm not going to Gamescom. I'm like, I just feel like I'm gonna be way more effective staying home. Um, and I love to get involved in like the day-to-day stuff too. I'm not totally disconnected from that. Like I said, I'm aware, but I also love to roll up my sleeves. We have a big kind of marketing beat coming up, and I just love the whole strategy of that, and working with the individual developers, and talking to them. Like, every developer has my cell phone number. Like, call me if you want to talk. And sometimes there's one of them that lives somewhat close to me, and we get together and go have lunch every once in a while. And I love that. It's really cool just to sort of bond. Uh, but the what was I talking about? The in how small the industry is. I totally went off on a tangent. At GDC, it sort of dawned on me when I was just running into people and meeting up with people, because after the whole Acclaim announcement, everybody was like going cuckoo and like, "Hey, let's meet up at GDC."
Hmm.
And it really hit me how long some of these people have been in the industry, and how I there's people that I know that I've known for 25, 30 years. And it's so cool. It's so cool to see them still around, still in the industry, being able to like reminisce and talk about things from back in the day. It's just really, really such a cool, warm industry. And I can't imagine that translating to anything else, maybe film and music, but this is probably a lot less douchey.
Debatable. When you become a publisher, right? Do you tell yourself, I'm going to be looking games in the United States only that target these genres, or are you pretty much open to saying, hey, you know what, we're going to listen to triple A's, we're going to listen to single A's, we're going to listen to indies, right? Like, or are you laser focused?
For me, I would say that the door is open. I want to see everything. I know there's certain things that maybe are not our cup of tea. I can look at something and say, This looks really cool, but it's probably not a good fit for what we're doing." Whereas other things, I can look at them and say, like, this is an Acclaim game 100%. Um, I don't think it matters where it's from. Like, we have a very interesting and diverse lineup in terms of our developers. They're from all over the place. We've got, developers in South America, Europe, uh, Australia, Africa, North America. So 5 different continents. Um, and they're all really cool games and very interesting and very unique, very different from each other. So it's yeah, it's pretty awesome. They're very different genres. Some of them are the same, um, or similar at least, but they're different genres, different styles of game, different uh, development scenarios, and it's a whole mix. So we're looking at everything. I think the one thing that we've really been focused on is not kind of blowing the bankroll on one game. There was a lot of stuff that was being presented right out of the gate where people were like, yeah, hey, we got this awesome game and it's sort of in the concept phase and we just need 15 million and we're going to be able to, get that prototype ready. And we're like, yeah, it's not going to be a good fit for us. Like, I don't talking about anything that's where there's not, a prototype or MVP or something like that, I don't think is a good idea, especially in this environment and in this sort of climate with games and who knows what the economy in general. Um,
You brought up a good thing, and I actually got a question from an audience member, which is very exciting. So thank you, Justin. For a publisher, where does the money actually come from? Is it private equity? Is it something we're allowed to talk about?
it's my piggy
Well,
bank.
It's
I mean,
one of my piggy banks.
it depends. I think Alex said earlier, like every publisher is different. Every publisher is funded differently too. It could be via someone's personal like bank. It could be via venture. It could be uh, an offshoot underneath some company. It is really good, like as a developer, to know where is the funding for the publisher coming from, because the priorities and other things are kind of connected to whatever the priorities of the larger entity potentially or owner, whoever it is, and goes kind of to their whim. So if a publisher is under some publicly traded company, they're going to make decisions based off of the public market and what is happening on that market. So you have to know that if that company has a lot of arms and maybe the publishing arm isn't their biggest arm, there's always a chance like they cut that piece, and it's happened a number of times. And so understanding where it comes from is key. And then if it's a venture backed publisher, which is pretty rare, you have to know that, well, that publisher is trying to 10, 100x whatever it is because they have venture money, and venture money is always looking for that large 100x unicorn return. That's why they invest in some of those kinds of things. So but it could really come from anywhere, from my perspective.
All right.
Yeah, agreed. uh, but that is a very good point that I didn't really ever think of, and I think maybe my initial reaction if a developer was like, who's funding you or where's your funding coming from, would be like, well, that's none of your business. But that is actually a very good and valid point, and maybe a very good, if I was in the shoes of a developer. And one thing I'm always doing, like, as with heading up publishing, is trying to turn the tape, trying to spin it around and say, okay, if I was this developer, what would be important to me? What would be, and look at it from that perspective. And I think that is an important question to say, hey, this is my baby I've been working on. I want to know that, first of all, you guys are likely to be around in a couple of years, and or by the time my game comes out, and that you're going to be able to support it, and that you're, um, and you may not, it's not like a publisher is required to provide you with their their P&L or their balance sheet or something like that. So you may just get a response of like, yeah, we're solid. If you're worried about it, then look elsewhere. But I the funding can come from any number of places, and I think as long as you know that it's a publisher that has a a fairly solid reputation, and that they're well funded, and that the people that are involved with the company have a pretty solid reputation, I think I would be, you're always operating off of the people within the publishing entity, or the don't always know the like, I don't sign the checks, you know um, but I'm operating off of the information provided to me, and hopefully that's good. I'd like to have my job in a year.
All right. Gamescom is coming up. After that, we got MDev coming up. And when you go to conferences like this, I'm pretty sure someone like you's schedule fills up really quick of people that want to pitch you games, right? I'm curious, kind of, what is your survival strategy at these types of events? And how can, if people have a meeting with a publisher, right? How do they make the most of that time? Any like one or two takeaways that they could go in thinking of for meetings like this?
So survival strategy. Well, yeah, I have Gamescom, then I go to Dice Europe, then I go to Nexus Dublin, then MDev, and probably a couple more shows in between. So I've a lot. I think opposite of Alex, I network nonstop, and it is yeah, it's really tough. I know I'm physically like harming myself by the fact that I just go so hard at these events. The the best strategy is, well, a, make sure you're drinking lots of water, um, but also like try to find a location that you get people to come to that's like relatively close to the show, but not like at the show, that is quiet, because I think the noise at these shows, you don't realize how like it just drains you at a certain point. There's just always so much happening. I have ADHD, so like, it's I'm paying attention to the 100 things happening around me at all times. And so, trying to find that space where you can really focus, it makes a deeper conversation, which I think so much of this is continuing to build bridges or maintain bridges, or just opportunities to connect, because you never know. I don't know if Alex has the same experience, but you just never know what's going to happen. Somebody goes to some new job, or some opportunity within a company happens. Suddenly they want to partner with you, or they want to like look at opportunities to collaborate. Or if you're looking for jobs, like they suddenly will be like, hey, they'd be really good for this kind of role. And so, I think it's just a matter of like pacing yourself as much as you can. I try to put in little blocks before and after meetings, although those tend to disappear the more packed my schedule is, because I also have FOMO. I never want to miss out on an opportunity, because you never know the one that might lead to something even more exciting for myself or a partner, or something else. And so, yeah, it's just always a bit absurd. And then, something like MDev, which I help to plan and everything like that, is just a mess, because there's so many things you want to think about strategically, and how you're supporting everyone at the show as well. But it's, I don't know. I love going to shows, but I also am like, oh my god, the next 3 months are going to be absurd. I'm going to get very little time with my wife and my dogs. And luckily now, like, I live on a lake in the middle of Wisconsin. And so at least when I'm back here, it's like super chill. And I'm not like in the madness of LA, which I am sometimes, still in LA part of the year. And you don't really get much of a break, because there's always another thing happening at that point.
Nice. What about getting one pitch? If you're going to give someone some of your time, or at
Oh,
an event like
yes.
that, what's the best strategy you could give someone?
Uh, get to know them, like get them to become an ambassador for you and for your idea. Like, get them as excited about the idea as you are, and they'll naturally want to continue to push it forward with their team, with anybody. If you just come in as just like trying to sell something, like we see it all day every day, like, make me passionate about it, make me excited about its potential, make me want to see it come to fruition. And if you can figure out a way to do that with somebody, like you have a much higher chance of, even if they're not the ones invested. Guess what? We all know each other. I'll be like, oh, this publisher would loves these types of games. Like they would, I'll connect you. Like sometimes it's that kind of stuff, but get them really excited about it, and I think they'll pass it forward and try to help you.
I love that. I think it goes back to that mantra of build the game you love, because if you truly love it, when you talk to someone about it, that love will come off, and they'll sense that. And I think that's the most important thing a developer can take a look at when building, especially by themselves. Alex.
Yes, I will never meet with I don't like meetings that are trying to get something done in the meeting. At conferences, I just think they're it's totally just it's unproductive. There's distractions, there's noise, it's like you're looking around, it's really difficult. I don't want to see games. I want to like do a quick meet and greet, like, yeah, let's shake hands and say hi. I'd love to meet you and meet you in person. And but I like doing the, hey, let's just set up a call, a conference call, and talk and have 30, 45 an hour to get to know each other and hear about the game and not have any distractions and ask all the questions that we might want to ask. And uh, I just love going about it that way. I think that said, for developers that are attending conferences or looking to get some exposure for their games or maybe exhibiting or something like that, not everybody has the budget or can do a Gamescom or a PAX or a GDC or whatever it is. I think a lot of these regional events, like I think MDev and different little different regional slightly smaller uh, conferences where developers can be seen and have the opportunity to sort of present without like blowing the budget that it would take to get to a Gamescom or something like that, are so important, and also really super important for fostering community in these various regions. I love that. And I just think it's a very difficult way, for me at least. And I don't even know. Maybe I do have ADHD. I could. It's very possible. When I was a kid, they just called it hyperactive.
Yep.
But
I didn't find out till a couple years ago, so that doesn't surprise me. Like
that's funny.
you
I had a
never know.
friend who just found out, like a friend, like I've known him for years, and then like last year, he was like, "Do you know? I just found out I have ADHD."
It turns out we
Um,
all have it.
so yeah, for me, it's very difficult to be able to focus and really give. I can look at a game, I can meet with the developer and look at the game, but it's not going to be the best way. Uh, you know, it's doing them a disservice, and that's really the reason why. It's not like I don't want to spend time looking at the game at a conference. I just like it's too much distraction. I can't really focus and get into it and get a feel for what the game is. So I'd rather get codes and then have a call and go about it that way. I just think it's a much better way, and it's a better opportunity for the developer.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think from my time at the conferences, I'd agree. It's about networking there. You don't need to try and sell anyone. The only thing you're trying to sell at a conference is you as an individual, right? You want to get to know this person, you want to like this person. And I think from there, you have those calls afterwards. It's a lot easier to consume that information afterwards rather than when I'm meeting or Ben's schedule, right? One after each other.
Well, and people like doing deals with people that they believe in, that they like, that they like. That's the reality of it. And because it's a partnership, it's a relationship, and you have to build a lot of foundational pieces before. I mean, if you look at investment, like all the data shows that it takes a long time before someone will invest in your company because they want to trust you, they want to have a relationship. Like you have to develop that over time. So if you're looking to get funding or publishing, play the long game. Play the game where you're developing those relationships over multiple years, because it's more likely that they would actually publish you or actually work with you 5 years from now than it will be in the next year.
Ben, you were talking about when it was time to pitch, you were talking about unless you have 200,000 wish list, right? Or you have something already. Like, then it's kind of that light bulb moment where with a publisher, I could see my path forward. But sometimes you're in the dark and you don't know what to do, and you don't know if you are ready for a publisher. What are some of those signs that aren't so obvious that, like, maybe I need to know this, or I should start looking into this? And
Well, let me answer that.
Go
First
for it.
off, like 200,000 is also a sign that maybe you don't need a publisher too.
That's what I
So
was gonna say.
yeah, so it's just you want to get as much traction as you. It's like a balancing act because you get to a certain point where you maybe built enough yourself. I would still argue you need certain publishing services. Do you need a full scale everything publisher to build it? Maybe you still do, and maybe you don't. I think you're always evaluating where you are versus where you want to get to, and what is the best way to move into that. And and the reality of the current environment, so we'll just talk right now, is you're going to have a really hard time attracting a publisher without something you can show that they can potentially like ideally play so they can really can get trust in it, because again you're building trust, building faith that you can get to wherever it is, and that you have some kind of momentum. Now the momentum could be from internal user tests where you're able to show a ton of data around all of this and you're able to verify because you had hundreds of people or something like that, or it's done via, hey, we announced it publicly, we were able to get this traction, we were able to get this interest, we retained users for 5 hours in a row because like all of those things are different ways to be able to say, hey, we have something, it's somewhat validated, not all the way, you're never going to be fully validated with it, but we have some signals that are really positive, and we think if we get more support with these signals, we're going to succeed down the line. And that's when you should really be thinking about, how could I get that support? Most likely it's going to be a publisher. If you have no money, a traditional publisher completely makes sense. If you already have budget, let's say you had venture dollars in, something like our shadow publishing might make a ton of sense because you already have dollars, you could pay for the services and keep your rev share. So you always have to be evaluating it based on where you're at, where you're trying to go, and what traction you're seeing. And the more traction points you have, I think the better chance you have at getting a publisher in the current environment.
That's that's solid, and I, I also just feel that, if you're, if you're looking at or thinking about pitching a publisher, get a good idea of what the publisher that you're, the publishers that you're talking to, what it is that they're typically looking for, and how they work. I think there's not always a lot of that. It's just sort of a blanket, like a blanket pitch, and put some solid thought into your pitch deck. What your pitch is, what you really truly need, what you're bringing to the table. Have something playable. Have a prototype MVP. Um, and sometimes, depending on what the environment is, the economic environment, and the industry environment, having a game late stage can be very attractive for a publisher. If they're not risking a bunch of money and 3 years of development, when who knows what's going to be going on in 3 years. um, you know that's that's important, and that's very, that can really resonate with a publisher. So I love seeing something that's just like well thought out, and it doesn't necessarily have to be killing it in terms of wish lists. It's understandable if a developer, like, they don't really know how to market the game, or they haven't done a bunch of
Mhm.
marketing, or they haven't done any marketing, but they have an awesome looking game. They have like a really solid prototype or a really solid demo, and the game's coming out, inside of 12 months, and it's it fits really well with, there's an audience on PC and also on console, and they've thought out their budget, That's an important one. Sometimes I see just sort of like an arbitrary number. It's like we need, you know, $750,000. Like, okay, well, where's that money going? And does it make sense for this game, for the level of development that's going into this game, for the size of the team, or is it that you're just trying to sort of fund your studio? Like, is this now a publisher is going to look at this and be like, is this really a collaboration and a partnership, or is this like a contract for hire? And that's something important for a developer to think about. Like, come into this as, a partnership, not as like, hey, we're trying to get paid and then get paid again.
I
Right? They need to back into numbers, right? Like, in fact, instead of 750,000, say 732,000. Like, it seems like, at least seems like a much more like exact reasoning, but also then show what you're trying to hire, why there needs to be justification for everything, what it is. It just helps. What you never want to have is a red flag in a publisher's head of being like, that doesn't make sense. Like that seems odd, because that could immediately set back what they could get really excited about a bunch of things and then see a red flag, and that could completely set them off course. Another thing to like mention thinking about is, think about a publisher's slate. Like, a publisher is always thinking about their entire slate, and there's certain windows that sometimes happen. And so sometimes it's just that things line up timing wise. And if you have a game, to Alex's point, of like coming out of the next year, and suddenly I have a gap because something else maybe moved out, and you're looking to fill that gap with something, and yours happens to fall in that gap, like that sometimes is an opportunity title where you're like, okay, well, we have a gap, our slate this year is less than we expected, so we're looking to fill that with something. And then sometimes that becomes the way. So understanding a publisher's slate, what they're doing, what they've announced, what their typical dollar amount that they invest in is, like, all of those are really valuable things to know.
It sounds so great, right? But like, there's two things that pop to my mind right away. One is like, is there just a comprehensive checklist of like, hey, here's the things you should take a look at before even considering even launching a game, right? Like, certain things you're mentioning here don't even make sense. And the second is like, how do I find this out about my publisher? I guess we just got to talk, right? We have a meeting and ask the right questions, right? I think that's a lot of this is your own due diligence, right? That you have to do, right? And hopefully they're listening to this podcast here to say, hey, these are the questions I need to be asking, right? There's nothing much more straightforward than that, right?
Well, it's not any
Yeah.
different than the investment scene, right? Like, if you are a startup going out to get investment. Now the difference is a little bit, not all of them, but there's some investors that will list this stuff on their website. We do this range, we do this type of investment, we do pre-seed, seed, Series A, whatever it is, and maybe they'll do some of your homework. But the reality is, you have to do homework with every investor to understand what they're looking for, how you might fit. And what that often means is, I have talked to thousands of investors at this point, and it's just, you have to talk to a lot of folks. It's a lot of legwork for identifying what could be just one group, and that's what you have to do in order to find kind of the right publisher. Otherwise, you're operating kind of blind, and your offer might reflect that. Even if they do offer it, you might be going with somebody that's actually a really bad fit for you.
Well, you have both dumped a ton of awesome information here. I feel like I got to go and just kind of reread and relook at this type of data. Love the idea of kind of this new generation of Acclaim versus not versus Acclaim and Midwest games, kind of building kind of this next generation of games, and I think it's going to bring kind of good spirit into the gaming industry. I feel like there's just positive vibes that come from publishers like this to help kind of raise studios up. I can't thank the two of you enough for taking all this time to answer all these silly questions,
Thank
good
you.
questions. Yeah. Um, Before we go, I'm going to let you each say goodbye and let us know where we can find you. And if you want to talk about anything you're releasing, I know Alex isn't allowed to, but hopefully he'll come back one day. But let us know where we can find you and your information, Alex.
Yeah, we'll be talking about some stuff very soon. So that's the tease right there. Just keep keep aware and keep watching. We'll be announcing stuff soon. And there's this submission form on the playacclaim.com website.
We can link to it. We'll have it on the player-driven blog. Is IGN the one that's going to get these hot takes? You're going to drop them off on the IGN next or whatever it is?
We're not gonna do any it's everyone's gonna get it.
There you go. Ben?
Yeah, you can. Well, you can find me personally pretty easily on LinkedIn. I'm the only Ben Kvalo in the world, so I'm most active, yeah, there on LinkedIn. But then MidwestGames.com, you can find Midwest Games on all your social channels: TikTok, Twitter, IG, and then we have a couple exciting games coming up that are getting a ton of traction lately. Tomb Water, which we just did a reveal of a map, full map that we got some really good press around. There's a demo out right now, so if you're not familiar, it's a Souls-like Western, kind of in the classic Zelda pixel art, but vastly bigger than Zelda. Somebody said on the level of Red Redemption 2, and I was like, okay, I'll go for that. And then we have a game called The Legend of Babu. Also, just recently went viral on Instagram and TikTok, which was exciting. And so, essentially, a action adventure from a studio in Turkey. You're a young kid with a big fluffy dog named Babu, and go on an adventure. You can ride the dog. They're your companion. They help you solve puzzles. So, really exciting one as well that we're working on.
Nice.
It's been awesome. This has been super exciting. I really enjoyed this.
Nice. I appreciate both of your times. So here's what I'm walking away with, and what I hope you are too if you're building something new right now. Publishing is a partnership, not a surrender. It's not about giving up your IP or your rights. It's about deciding where you need help, finding a partner who respects your creative vision while bringing the business muscle you might not have the time to build. Know what you're good at and what you're not. If you're great at community and comms but hate thinking about the marketing strategy or platform relations, that's where a publisher can fill in the gaps. Don't just focus on rev share, ask the right questions. Too many devs only ask, what percentage do you take? How much does it cost? Not things like, how will you help me shape my roadmap? Or what relationships you have with Steam or PlayStation or Xbox? Or how do you support testing, feedback, and localization? Or even why those are important. You need to be a business, even if you're an artist at heart. If you're walking into a deal without budgeting and this is your baby, or understanding the scope creep or planning for long-term monetization, you're giving the other party leverage. Understand the business or find someone you trust who does. Shadow publishing is an option. Ben mentioned an emerging model where studios pay upfront for services instead of giving up long-term royalties or IP. That takes more prep, business readiness, but it gives you full control. Worth exploring. The first game is hard. The second game is even harder. Sustainable success doesn't come from one hit. It comes from building the foundation and learning what scales. That's why choosing the right publisher support at the right time matters more than ever. There is so much more, but if you are looking to learn any more, you can check out the Player Driven blog. We have links to everywhere you need to go to find Ben or to find Alex. And if you like this or you know anyone that would, please let them know about it, share it with them. And if you have any questions, drop in their comments. Thanks for listening and have a great rest of your week.